Malinowski was born in 1884 in Krakow to Luke John and Józefa Malinowski. Both parents studied culture and linguistics, and his father taught at Jagiellonian University. After exploring several disciplines, including physics and mathematics, Bronislaw earned a PhD at Jagiellonian. Malinowski decided to go to London in 1910. He admired and researched the English way of life, and he strove to gain some acceptance in the upper echelon of society. He studied at the London School of Economics, where he took a strong interest in anthropology, the study of humans. Malinowski desired to study people who were often labeled primitive by Europeans in a more direct fashion than many of his predecessors. Shortly before the outbreak of the First World War, he traveled to the Southwest Pacific and lived and studied with the Trobriand Islanders in what is now eastern Papua New Guinea. In 1922, Malinowski published Argonauts of the Western Pacific, where he described the Kula Ring, which is a ceremony that a number of tribes in East Papua New Guinea take part in where they exchange gifts. Whereas many Europeans who previously came into contact with tribes in the region took little interest in the ritual, he described it as a means to establish trade and trust between tribes. His work greatly influenced what is now clearly defined as ethnographic writing. In addition to the fieldwork data he collected, he included other information about his research and applied theoretical principles to create a cohesive narrative about the people he studied. In 1929, The Sexual Life of Savages in Northwestern Melanesia was published in Britain and the United States. Malinowski wrote about the maternal lineages of the tribal people of New Guinea in great detail. As an academic, he examined the sexual lives and relationships of the people he studied as a function within their society. In contrast to the traditions of many Europeans, the children were brought up with the mother's line taking precedent over the father, and his observations led him to believe that uncles were the main male influence in the lives of children. He also noted that they enjoyed considerable freedom and parental figures did not use domestic coercion or regular discipline to keep children in line. While his observations definitely added much to the debate of Freud and the Oedipus complex, which was rather strong in Europe at the time, they also provided a sharp contrast to many of the regimented approaches to child rearing. Ultimately, Malinowski's early fieldwork led him to argue that culture functioned to meet the needs of individuals rather than society as a whole. He continued studying other groups, including the Hopi natives in the American Southwest, the Bimba and the Chaga in East Africa, and the Zapotec of Mexico. He published over a dozen works and had such a lasting influence he earned the title Father of Social Anthropology. Malinowski was a visiting professor at several universities before landing at Yale about the time World War II broke out. In 1967, his private diaries were published. Some of his writings exposed a slightly more ethnocentric side to the anthropologist, much to the disappointment of some who revered him. Malinowski's efforts to examine the culture of the tribes of eastern Papua New Guinea opened the door to studying the lives and respecting the traditions of people all around the world. His career inspired many others to begin studying traditions and practices from a culturally relevant viewpoint rather than the lens shaped by their own upbringing. In popular culture, it was Malinowski who met Indiana Jones shortly after the end of World War I and convinced him to study to be an archaeologist. Bronislaw Malinowski died in May 1942 of a heart attack while doing fieldwork in Mexico.